Hello and welcome to Mindfulness Mondays. I'm here with Beverly Kyer, and we're continuing our discussion that we had last week, talking about the things that we have learned from the pandemic. In particular, Beverly's going to concentrate on the need for connection. Hello, Beverly. How are you today?
Hi, Linus. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Looking good.
Thank you. Good to see you.
So today, I wanted to expand on what we talked about at actually, I think we started 2 weeks ago about things we learned from the pandemic, and it, it it grows on me, and I'm sure it grows on many of you in the way that we understand about what has happened. We made it through a year. We had to make many changes and adjustments. We had to learn new ways of being, new ways to compensate for things that were no longer there, and or come up with alternative strategies for how we live, how we do our lives, how we take care of our affairs, our business, whether at work or at home. Among the things we learned, and it certainly came up in my work a lot, that the overall experience, the totality of the experiences, whether there's were losses or the restrictions or whatever it was, um, it caused a lot of things. It created a lot of things in terms of the emotional impacts that this has had on people. Notwithstanding, it's not really completely over. It's not really over by a long stretch. So there's still the questions and the anxieties of what next and how long and when will and all of that stuff. But it created for so many people degrees of loneliness, degrees of isolation, and for a significant number of people, unfortunately, it causes degrees of depression, rather just depressed states or just really struggling with depression. And so, part of the learning that evolved out of that is how important this one missing factor was, and that was the factor called connection, human connection. Some people like to go through life and kind of manage things on their own, kind of struggle through it on their own, overcome things on their own. But we are wired as human beings for connection, to talk to people, to share with people, to see people, to touch people, to be able to hug people. I heard that so much. People saying, I just need a hug. I miss being able to do that. Being in the same office space with people, even many of us in our households with our family members, when they or we need to be outside exposed to the public and we come back home, that we couldn't just be as close. We needed to practice the safety, not to cause an exposure of the virus. And so that human connection piece really got pushed back, became absent in so many ways for so many of us, yet we need it. How do you stay connected in spite of all of the shelter in place kinds of things, working away from home or working at the house? That became a real problem for people. Now, some of us had to learn that it was important to do, but some of us were really missing it, really missing it. Certain people we needed to call and contact and check in with them and give them permission to check in with us, just so that we could have that kind of contact and even to do that on some kind of regularity. Um, Many of us had to learn to be courageous enough, comfortable enough to say, I need contact. I need to hear from you. There's people who like to say to me, based on the way that I work as a businesswoman, used to travel a lot. They said, well, you don't have time. Do you have time to get in touch with us and get time to get connected? And I would say to people, and I had to say, don't wait for me, because I could get so caught up in the myriad factors of this work that I need you to reach out and say, Bev, it's time. I haven't heard from you. Just send me a little text, a little contact, or leave me a little message on the phone to do that. That was important. That was an important learning to do. But I'm one of those people who made the adjustment relatively well to reach out and say. I also made a list of people that I hadn't heard from a while. That might have been the norm in the past, but during the pandemic, this even considering the possible stresses that they were facing. Some of them I knew about, but I made the assumption or the assertion that I needed to do more in terms of just touching base with people who I hadn't heard from in a while and letting them know I'm here. And then to whatever extent we agreed, we said, well, we're going to stay in contact a little more, much more frequently than we used to do before. Uh, that's a major, major piece. Recognizing also in our own households, um, we're living with people. Again, I want to say, in terms of couples, whatever that relationship is, that some of you may be working off site, some of you may be working in the house. You got children, perhaps, that want to be outside, need to be outside. And in many instances, you have to say no. Some of you are taking care of family members. It could be your mother and father, the elderly members of your family. It's multi generational households. Um, you could be taking care of another relative, well, whatever that is, even in the household at the same mix, everybody's doing their own thing, struggling in their own way to cope with the all the complications, all the competing commitments of the COVID experience for us. And so in the household could be very, very intense. And yet I want to say to that, because I've heard so many variations of that story, various stories from people of how that was working. It really taxed relationships that you need to be connected. And I have said, and to some degree, I say, just stop and think. We could easily, probably, be very, very focused on what a struggle it is to us individually, what we're going through, our work responsibilities, our household responsibilities, our family caregiving responsibilities. But just don't get trapped, or don't fall into that pit of being competitive, that your situation is worse than the others. Everybody struggles. And so connect again with them, and just sometimes just sit and listen with them, or ask them, how's it going for you? And don't let them say that they're doing fine, they're okay, because they're probably not really, really doing fine. They're just coping, they're just pushing, they're just trying to make it worse, the best out of a bad situation. And some people would even say, I'm holding on by a thread. But check in and say, it's okay not to be okay, and let's just figure out something else to do, so that we can create a kind of atmosphere in this house that facilitates, invites, encourages self care. So connect with each other, even when we're really, really, really frustrated. Just sit down sometime and take stock. Sit back and say, is this tension? And I get it. It's rough all over. How you doing? How you doing? Where are you today? And what do you need? What can I do? So do those kinds of things. And sometimes, even in doing that, I call for a level of spontaneity that pulls us away from the day-to-day responsibilities that do blur. They just, COVID caused it a blur. Many people say there's no starting point, there's no ending point for the day. Merging your work, your home, your family, your life, the relationships together is this continuous. But sometimes just stop spontaneity and say, let's just do something off the chart, do something a little bizarre, that this kind of helps us connect as a family. Rather, spread a blanket out and have a picnic on the floor in the middle of the living room or middle of the dining room. Do something different, do something creative, do something fun, do something ridiculous to do. Order in some food and don't even cook, and just play games and stuff like that. But do that to kind of create that household. At the same time, while I'm asking you who are listening to me to do things to help build connection in your house, I gotta say this too. Be careful, don't leave yourself out of that, because that's a tendency of us too. You want to teach people how to treat you, so you want to also incorporate or concurrently consider your own self care. And it requires for us to write ourselves into the daily plan. What are you going to do for yourself? Make a practice, sometimes make an announcement, sometimes put up a chart on the wall and say, this is mommy's time and for the soap, this is daddy's time for this is cousin's time for this is time for this, to do things that pamper, to enrich, to recharge yourself. Do those things as well. Do those things as well. And encourage other people to support that, or use your example as a model of how to do self care. Again, it's connecting with each other on a very relational level. That's a different even kind of intimacy, that you just being aware, noticing the stress that each of you are facing, and doing something about it to lift one another. Ultimately, that's like having each other's back. Whether you're doing that kind of connection that I highly encourage with your coworkers, now that most of us are on Zoom talking to them, just kind of notice right through that Zoom picture that somebody is struggling and say something, offer something, just be there, just smile and just tell them, you're doing a great job. I get it. You really put a lot into this. And so you could take a pause and step back for a moment and let's just have a tea chat or something like that. That's really having each other's back, home and at work. I also, we learn, many of us, and I got a lot of suggestions and ideas from people as I was talking to different agencies of what do you do? What are some of the things you could do to build and bridge those kinds of connections to each other? I did initially hear a lot of complaints, well, we're on Zoom all the time to work, and we don't want to be on the outside to play. And I kind of say from my heart, get over that. Get over that. Use the same system. If that's all you have for lengthy periods of time is a Zoom, then get on there. People said they're playing all kinds of games together. I just joined by invitation a social club of ladies roughly my age and stuff like that. We're going to be doing some interesting things, had wonderful kind of conversations, but social clubs could be formed or the existing ones that you had before COVID could be brought back to the fore and you kind of operate much the same way, but virtually. People are celebrating all kinds of parties. I enjoyed wonderful parties for Christmas and ugly sweater parties. The New Year's, we brought it in together in several states around the country, friends scattered and family scattered all over the place. I really am engaged in, and many of my colleagues have these chat sessions where we just have tea or we have coffee or we have cocktails in the evening and we just talk and we just laugh and we share. Sometimes we even watch movies together. I've been to retreats. I help develop retreats with some of my teams and my fellow entrepreneurs in the business uh, to really share. And I even had a wonderful retreat. You should have been at the one that Linus developed. It was powerful. It was so interactive. It was so not only stimulating, but refreshing and restoring and loving with all of these people coming together, sharing their skills and their talents that lift and nurture the human body, mind, and spirit. And then, of course, getting to share ideas. Part of the learnings from the pandemic experience that's still going on is people are always coming up with new ideas, new intuitive, new inventive ways of doing things to stay connected with one another and to enjoy those connections. I want to say this again that it's not over, not completely. Some areas there's even growth or spread of the virus. Some areas are really leveling down, but there is a wake and there's a residual of this pandemic, so it's going to be time. And you can't afford, as one lady said to me, well, when this is over, I'm going to get back to that. I said, no, 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 no. Right now, figure out a way to connect and stay connected. See faces, see smiles, give a wave, give a shout out, send love, blow a kiss, and give a virtual hug. Connection. We all need it, and we all deserve it. So that's what I wanted to share today.
Here I come.
Can't hear you. Lost the sound.
Okay, it keeps muting itself. Okay, you can hear me now.
Now I can
Reason it
hear
kept
you.
going back on mute. Yeah, I kept going back on mute. But I was listening to what you were saying, and I went ahead and made notes where people can go back and play back some of the things, some of our learnings, and some suggestions on how we can keep moving forward. And when we've done these sharings, it has actually streamed to about four other groups, and I keep forgetting to tell you that. And we have comments on those as well. And I can't see all of them, but on the comment we had last week, and about 25 people in the group in my Wellness Woman group were watching. And one of the things that they were talking about were the different ways that they had learned to cope in the pandemic. And one of them that was an ongoing theme was learning how to count on one another in a different way, being more transparent about what they needed, being more transparent about how they were feeling, and
Mm-hmm.
even letting their kids know. how they were feeling. Normally I don't tell them we're, stoic, whatever, but, being more transparent because after all, the kids were right there with them. Sometimes they're adult kids they had not lived with in a couple of years or so because they've been away from college and only come home for a couple of months here or there. Well, they're back home as adults. Uh,
Mhm.
you have these, what used to be two adults and two kids. Now you have four adults living there.
Mhm.
And normally you wouldn't tell the kid, you're getting on my nerves. But with the adults, they did have to learn how to do that. And so it goes right with what you're saying in terms of learning how to be more transparent, learning how to bridge those connections.
I think that that's one of the things the pandemic forced many of us to do, to come out of our way of working and operating in solo. And I want to attribute a lot of that to culturally how we were raised, how we grew up. Sometimes it's gender related. Sometimes it's the firstborn in the family that's always taking on that responsibility for others, but would really ever say that I need help, I need to talk to somebody. And it has forced us to do that. And it's a good learning because now that you've done it, most of us could probably say, I enjoy being in contact. I remember sometimes when I got sick, you would just text me and say, how you doing today? And I wouldn't think I'm fine, but I just felt so, oh God, somebody is aware of me. Somebody's thinking of me. And that's a big growth. That's a big learning. And I hope when I say that we hold on to that. We never go back to that isolated way, um, even intentional, isolated way of being, that we continue to stay connected to each other. Hmm.
Even right now, people have been talking a lot about what they have learned, reflecting
Hmm.
back. And I hear so many positive things in terms of reconnecting with their families, quality time, realizing what's really important versus what they
Yes.
thought was important. And you're right. We are not at the end of this yet. In fact, someone who's watching, one of your listeners, this is what she just got through saying. He said, that's right, that someone we know right now is in the hospital, or someone, a friend of a friend, is in the hospital right now with COVID. It is not
Hmm.
over.
Mm-mm.
It's still going, and we want to be sensitive to that. It's still going on, regardless of what side of the spectrum you sit on politically. The bottom line is that people are still getting sick. And people are still isolating and still sheltering in place and doing the things they feel they need to do to protect
And
themselves.
struggling from past
So,
losses, whatever those losses may have been.
struggling from past losses, yes. So it's still important for us to do the things that you talked about doing in terms of connecting and being consistent and reaching out to people and talking and being transparent, letting people know what you need, but also making sure that you take good care of yourself if those around you aren't able to meet your needs. Many
Hmm.
times the things that we need, they might think they know and do certain things like, oh, that's nice, but what I really need is such and such. Well, go ahead and do that thing. Go ahead and do that thing for yourself because
Hmm.
enhanced self care is probably the most important thing during this period of time. I
Yep.
just love talking to Beverly, and we will be back next week. And I believe it's next week we will have with us a special guest who will be
Yes.
talking. Yeah, she'll be talking about weight. I don't want to call it weight loss, weight release during the
Well,
pandemic for
yeah,
you
she,
in
she,
particular.
I invited, her name is Karen, and I invited her because she's addressing one of the, it's a major issue for most of us. You know how when people were talking about in the first 2, 3 months, even fourth month of the COVID shutdown, shelter in place, that they put on the COVID-10 or the COVID-15 or the COVID-20.
Oh
We were talking about pounds.
yeah,
And
right.
I'm one of the people too. I was a ring leader. I tried to eat the top off a desk. And and I say at the same time I say that almost all of us know exactly what to eat and what not to eat. Yet
Oh
we
yeah.
do. And so my question had always been from a very personal point, why do I do the very thing I know not to do? And so that's what Karen specializes in. And I thought it was, I love to share new and good information. She had a good talk to me to open my eyes about some blind spots in me that
Mhm.
come with this weight gain, the seesawing and weight too. And so she's coming on next week to share with you to really, really understand how we eat, why we eat, what triggers us to overeat, overeat. during our stress. During our stress. I'm blaming on the
Absolutely.
stress.
I can hardly
No
wait to hear
matter
that
how,
because
I'm blaming
I
it
can
on the
hardly
stress.
wait. Yep,
Hmm
I can
So
hardly
yeah,
wait to
that's
hear
I'm
that.
looking forward to talking to her. It's going to be
Yeah,
powerful.
yeah, that's a real deal. I have to say, I've had an increase in business as a result of women who want to drop those COVID pounds and inches. So I understand. It'll be great to
Yeah.
peel back the layers to find out where that comes from. Oh, and one
hmm
of our listeners have just mentioned that they had relatives in her family who have passed away from COVID.
Condolences,
So
condolences.
yeah, our condolences to you, Adrian. I'm sorry to hear that. I think all of us know someone, or even had someone in our family. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people have passed on. So our condolences to you, honey.
Almost a
And thank you.
half a million people are gone.
That's right. So the chances of us knowing someone is very real. Well, thank you
Mhm.
very much for listening, everybody. And thanks, Beverly. We'll see you
Thank you,
next week.
Linus, and to the rest of you, stay safe and stay well and stay vigilant. And God bless. And see you next
And
week.
for those of you who happen to be on Facebook on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Beverly is going to be running live on blackdoctors.org. They have a Facebook page here, and I'll be posting information about that, but you don't want to miss that. They're a huge platform, and they've asked you to come and talk about compassion fatigue. So, go ahead and find out more information and see Beverly in action on Wednesday at 6 p.m. on blackdoctors.org Facebook Live. All right. Thanks so much, everybody, and we'll see you real
Bye
soon.
bye.
Thanks again. Bye.